Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. Learn from their experiences and navigate the highs and lows of the investing world. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited. My friend Corianne Wright is with us today, and we have had a chance to spend quite a bit of time virtually together, and we actually got to meet in person at Jamal's mastermind out in Arizona a few months back. So we got to embrace and meet each other for real. Corianne, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're really busy. I'm just privileged to have you with us today. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and to anybody that's questioning. We have talked for quite a while. It's always been virtual. We always get to see your neck up, but you are built. That was the first when I saw you, and we got to hug in person. So much muscle. Oh my goodness. So that was extra fun. And how much do you have to work out to get that built? I'm very, very curious.
Well, I think that's another podcast, honestly. You're the guest. I'm the host, right?
All right.
So we can talk about me some other day.
Fair enough.
But we've all got things that we work on, right? We work on our personal stuff, and that affects how we are in our business and how we come to work every day and our attitude. So, for me, it's about getting centered and knowing that I'm good, right? I feel good, and that helps me, execute in my daily basis, right?
Yeah.
That's
something I've been learning.
You're a very interesting person.
Oh, thank you.
And I say this in a positive way because you got a very interesting background, right? Like you're an artist, right?
Yeah.
That is your core as an artist. And you went to the School of Art of Institute of Chicago, which is where I think you met your husband there, or did you guys know each other before that?
No, we met there. Yep. So we were both graduates of there, and art school. I definitely did that after college. And never, ever, if you had asked me at 18 if I was ever going to be in real estate, I'm sure you would have gotten a big because I didn't understand what it was to start. And then on top of that, I think the artist ego is always, I paint and live to paint and only to paint. And then somewhere, a year or two after college, you go, oh, wait, I want to live so I can paint. And how do I want to maybe change my ecosystem so that I'm not like painting and begging people to buy my work, but rather have the income and lifestyle I want so I can paint because it's the thing that brings me the most joy. So when my husband and I were like, oh yeah, we're marrying artists, there is no doctor's future for us. We had to add something, and that was real estate. Just so happens that I fell in love with it. It became kind of one of my creative outlets and the thing that I like playing in, and it has allowed him to go and be a full-time artist. So he's taken off. He's got a couple museum shows under his belt. He also has representation and all of these things. So I get to live and see artwork being made in a really professional sense while also facilitating it and being only in really real estate right now.
Yeah, it's such a weird dichotomy, right? Really, sales and wholesale and real estate is diametrically opposed to the art world. Like, how does that even work?
I would have told you the same thing when I was coming into it. And so I tried to keep my brains as separate as possible. I wouldn't tell anybody in real estate I was in art. I certainly wasn't going to tell my art friends I was doing real estate. And I was keeping those worlds completely separate until it finally clicked for me, their similarities. And some of the similarities just exist in me, right? Like it's kind of like, well, I like both things, and that's okay. Like I am the thing that brings them together. But also like wholesale real estate, investing of any kind is some of the most creative things I've ever seen that impacts in such a heavy way. Like as an artist, if you're going to paint something, you want you want people to walk up to it and it impact them somehow. Like that's the whole purpose. And I've had a few paintings where people, it would create them to move. Like they'd be like, oh, this character's doing this, and they'd move in front of my painting. And that was like, yes, I've influenced, I've impacted. Um, Small beans when it comes down to what I can do in terms of influence and impact in real estate immediately for somebody's life. And that
Oh yeah.
needs a lot of creativity because let's say a family is going through a really hard time, all they know is the option to list. Well, come to find out, there's like 6, 7 other options as to how we can create whatever your next step is. And I get to bring that creative thought to it. So when I figured out it was a game of play in almost the same way painting is, it all, I told everybody I was both things. I was happy to be both.
Yeah, I like that you really, focusing on that word create, right? Because they talk about, creative deal structure and, there's creative financing and there's all these creative options that we can put together for people when we're talking to them. And that's what you do in the art world. Are those two things happening on opposite sides of the brain?
Technically, I believe so. Um, and I mean, it depends. It needs both sides of the brain, right? Because there is just, if I were to approach a painting and I were to just kind of throw paint at it, I would really only be using extremely creative side. But when I approach a painting, I know what colors will next to each other are going to change your brain chemistry. I know what direction I want your eyes to go, depending on what feeling I want to create. Like there is a lot of history in art that if you bring to the table is very analytical, and you need some
Mm.
of that to continue to speak the same language. There's a whole history of it there. So I have to bring that analytical side even when I'm approaching a painting. So I think they're kind of flowing in and out because you got to know the math side of things to be able to bring solid offers. But you also have to
Absolutely.
understand the empathy or the motivation or what's needed for that seller. So it's kind of, man, it's all lighting up in there, I think.
Oh yeah. And this is completely unrelated, but it made me think about, and again, not parallel at all, but like when like an athlete goes to dance school, right? Like it's
Mm,
they've got like their thing they got to do. There's the business of playing a sport, but they'll go to dance school or take ballet because they know it helps them in that world.
yeah. Yeah, they get better balance and all of a sudden
Mhm.
they're kicking the soccer ball better because they know a little bit of ballet.
Right.
And so I hope that I build a business that is so integrated in the way that I approach a creative life and the way that I think as an artist that they're inseparable. That there's a reason you want to work with me because I'm not only just a math nerd for the numbers. Of course, data is important. You and
Oh
I
yeah.
talk about data every week. And knowing how to kind of flow between those things, I hope my business shows up in that way.
Oh, I know it does. But you said it's something interesting too about realizing that like your art, your love of art can only go so far. There's a business side of life that we have to think about. We got to pay our bills and we have mortgages and rents to pay for. So it sounds like
Mhm.
early on you figured out like I need to figure out a way to do both. Right. And then you've
Yeah.
taken that capability and incorporated it into the way you work with agents and homeowners on the phone.
Yeah. My husband eloquently pointed out to me that even when I was in art school, I was normally moving people in some way.
Mm.
I was an animator, I was in film, so I liked to be in a dark room alone and drawing and creating lots of those things. But I would still spend about 2 to 3 times a week either leading a group or setting up an event, or I was very, very heavily into the culture that was happening at my school and creating more of it. And when I like kind of follow my path, I've been doing this forever when it comes to just connecting people. Because the first thought for myself when I was like, you know what, I don't want my paintings to have to hold the weight of all my financial life. I started off doing teaching. I ran a gallery. I was curating. So I was doing a lot of that people movement in the art industry. And I never really made the connection that that was a huge part of what I was good at, is connecting people. And I'd be doing it in the art industry if I only stayed there. And now I get the joy of doing it in real estate.
Yeah, so it seems like you've always had a knack of thinking about art in a business mentality, right? Like when you said,
Mhm.
curating and being the leader of a gallery, and I'm thinking about Odessa and
Mhm.
how you guys formed that to really start highlighting different artists and putting their stories out there.
Yeah. We had moved to Colorado from Chicago. We knew nothing about what was going on here. And we looked at each other and like, the first thing we need to know is the people that are moving in the art industry here. So we started interviewing them and just putting them up on our website. And that's the same when I came into real estate. Unfortunately, when I first got into real estate, I didn't realize how much of a people game it needed to be. I was so stressed about the numbers and the bigness of making sure that I gave the right contracts. And there's so much little nuance there that if I had approached wholesaling right from the start as, oh, this is a people business, and I approached it the same way I had art, I think that connection would have happened for me so much faster.
Oh yeah.
But I had to go through the reps to learn that. But I've kind of always had that thing of let's go find the people, let's get to know them, and then let's add as much value as we can until we are those people.
Oh yeah. And you've talked about some of the ways you've incorporated your love of art into the business. Any other like unique takes or cool approaches that you've developed from that background into like what you do every day?
I I don't think about it as much as I should. I think something to answer your question clearly, I probably can in about a month and a half because I've
Mm-hmm.
started painting while I'm on the phone. So there is a brain connect for me while I'm painting and I'm talking to an agent. And I'm curious if that's going to bring any metaphors to conversations with agents or anything like that. But I think what it's brought is more of just spontaneity for me on the phone. I'm okay to be the
Mm.
goofy artist person, but I can help you because I do these many deals a month, et cetera, et cetera. So most people that contact me from the Wholesale 101, they go, your superpower is being on the phone. Oh, thank you. I love that. I received that.
Yeah,
And it used to be the thing I would stay away from as hard as possible. So in a lot of ways, my superpower was the thing that it was my biggest obstacle to start.
that's really interesting. Is that why like you stayed away from it? Where it's kind of like what is the Spider-Man power? Where it's like you're blessed with this, but you really have to harness the power, otherwise it could go out of control, right? Is that kind of how you saw it? Like, oh, I could use this power for good or for evil.
I saw it as if I picked up the phone and I talked to somebody else about real estate, I was going to embarrass the heck out of myself. And I was
Mm.
terrified of that. And then when I realized that everybody out there is normally embarrassing some aspect of themselves, or they're more concerned about what's going on with them anyway, then I stopped being concerned about embarrassing myself. And I started thinking, well, how can I add value to them? And if they don't want to talk to me, or they don't think I'm smart, or they hang up on me, again, that's on them. And I'll go find somebody else who does want my help.
Right. It's a great approach. You could really get out of your own way when you approach it that way. And it isn't the end of the world if that's conversation goes sideways. But you've
Mm.
been able to kind of get past that and those objections and the negative outcomes that potentially come from those calls. Does that come from that background too, or is that something that's just in you and the ability to kind of just push forward?
Probably in me a little bit. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's in any entrepreneur, kind of this idea that, well, if that one didn't work, I'll build another. Um, and so, yeah, I've always had that. If the painting didn't work, I'll paint another. If the painting didn't sell because I curated it together, I'll sell another. And I think that carried on over into real estate, where when it doesn't work out, I keep going. And I have that for the businesses because Odessa was a gallery And when I first came over and did wholesaling, I brought Odessa in the name in the LLC with me, and I just changed it to Odessa Homes. And that was one of my mini startups in wholesaling. I am technically on my fourth LLC and my fourth restart of a business. And so, and I wish I wasn't. I wish I had kept with the first one and it all worked out for me. But on each one, I felt more confident that I could start again and start faster and better. And that's how I feel on this one. Kickflip Consultants has been fun to build. And the first time that I've really enjoyed seeing what I can do with my own marketing and my own design and how I can bring that over. But even more importantly, like I get to choose how the company addresses people outside of the company. And that was so important to me and why I wanted to make that shift. And yeah, that once you've done a few, you can do another. I was talking to Mahmood, who is a serial entrepreneur, and he's the one that gave me that confidence for the fourth start. He was like, oh yeah, I've done about 6 wholesale companies. I'll probably start a 7th at some point. And he just has that energy of, well, if you are an entrepreneur, you can take that with you into anything.
Oh yeah. Help me understand the purpose of restarting a wholesale company. Like why go and rebrand it and restart? Is there a financial element of it, or is it just mental? Like, okay, I need to like figure some stuff out. I need a fresh start.
Each one had its own unique reason. The very, very first was because I had brought my family in on the wholesaling journey with me, including operating agreement. So there were some financial, technical aspects of working with your family, and that had to close. Odessa, similar. They weren't on operating agreement in terms of that, but it was carrying such a lineage of art and all sorts of things that when somebody brought me the idea of the third business that we built together, I was excited. I was like, yeah, let's close Odessa because it's got all these weird art strings on it, and let's start fresh, holdings company, wholesaling. And that was my third run. And the reason that I left that was really just creative differences. I put a lot of my heart and soul into that one, but it was more important to me to be in a place where I could facilitate smaller checks for myself and checks for lots of people than only hone myself off to I can only have big checks. And that was our creative difference, if you will, is are we going to take on the more JV side of the business that helps other people get their contracts, or are we going to focus on what we know and make the largest spreads we could? And when we differed on that, we decided to go different ways. So in building Kickflip Consultants, I was able to, consultants, I mean it. I mean that I'm there to consult not only my clients and my buyers and what kind of flips are going to bring them the most money, but I'm there to consult other wholesalers and what kind of deals do they have? Are they actually going to sell? What number should we get it under? And sometimes I don't walk away with a huge cut on that, but I do get to walk away with some money and helping somebody else make their own check. And for many people, that's completely new. I think I have never been a W-2 person. There's a few things that I can say that I've shown up for as a work job consistently, but the artist side of me has always been like, I'll make a check myself somehow, I'll hustle. And so helping other people who maybe haven't had that opportunity for most of their life, like I have, experience that, it's a high. It's a total high. So yeah, now I get to do more of that in my business, and it serves me. It's the teaching part of me gets fulfilled in that.
Oh yeah. Does your why center around helping others? Is that what gets you out of bed in the morning, or have you thought about like what your why is?
I think I'm still defining it in a sort of a new season. When we were at Mastermind, Jamil had pulled me aside and he said, hey, it looks like you really went through something on one of your meditations. And I was like, I think I did, but I don't know what it is. And he was like, well, the scales are going to start to fall. And I thought he meant like, oh, in like 2 or 3 days, lightning bulb will go off. But instead of that, it has really felt like sort of a shedding of a skin and coming into a fullness of who I want to be. And that is talking about both art and the art world and real estate and doing that comfortably in the same setting. And I think I think that's going to shift my why. But I do know for sure that a big part of what makes me feel fulfilled is helping other people. And
Mhm.
I also know that a big part of what makes me feel fulfilled is having a creative life and seeing other people get to create whatever that means for them. So I get to live on a ranch with goats and chickens, and I get to grow in my greenhouse. And like, there are things that I get to have in my life specifically because of real estate that just make outside of the studio creative. Like, it's not only in my studio that I get to do all of these fun things. And that can be for anybody and everybody,
Right.
building and creating the kind of life that they want. And so a huge part of my why is finding those people who need a resource to create that and teaching them what wholesaling is.
Oh yeah. Just before we got on, you were talking about the mindset call you were just on with Carlos. Um, you should be leading those calls. You should have your own mindset call too, because you do have a way of just of speaking that I think is inspiring. And that's why I know you were chosen for Wholesale 101, because you do, you put that out there. And I think it's helping the audience for the trainings. Have you ever thought about doing any sort of coaching or mentoring in your business?
I have thought pretty heavily about it because I
Mhm.
am neuro linguistic practitioner certified,
Oh,
which really just has it's a few different nuances, but it means that I'm very aware of my language and other people's language and how to kind of correct that so that hopefully they see different results. Because I believe that words are magic. Like, if I tell you, Benson, you are absolutely amazing, I believe that is going to literally hit you different than telling you something completely the opposite, right? So I want to breathe life into the kinds of people that I'm talking to. And that means I think at some point I'm definitely going to be coaching. What that looks like, I'm not quite sure. But I'm starting a YouTube this month. It's going to go live. And a big part
yeah.
of that is I have two people who, anytime they call me, we just start recording, and basically all the coaching that I'm giving them to for free, I'm going to put on YouTube for free.
Oh, that's a great way of, starting to put it out there and, kind of create that thought leadership and get people to follow the channel, because when you first create the channel, there's no one watching, right?
There's no one watching. It's true.
And
We're going to go live for the first time on Friday, probably just with like maybe two people. And that's okay. It's
oh
growing
yeah,
though.
it's got to start that way. But I believe it's going to grow quickly, right? So I
Mm.
believe that, you've already got followers on, Instagram and some of your other socials. And so, you have to believe, well, I believe that those people are just going to come right to the YouTube channel. And then, I mean, who better to talk to than Jamil about this idea, right, of coaching and mentoring? Because, I've seen him elevate others people from the community to go and kind of do their own thing as well. Have you talked to Jamil about it yet?
I've told him that I'm starting the YouTube. In fact, I mean, I didn't tell him I was starting the YouTube. He told me I should start a YouTube. And then 2 weeks later, I came back and said, okay, I'll do it.
Right.
So yeah, he's a big part of encouraging that. And he already gives me that amazing platform on Wholesale 101 to just be present and to be able to help people. And that has it's lit so much up in me of going, well, that's kind of my thing. Like, I love being on the phones. I love making money. I want to see my company grow and expand. But there is something completely different when it's helping somebody else connect that. And I want everybody to beat my record, because I have the worst record in terms of how long it took me from the word wholesaling to actually making my first deal to actually making consistent deals. I stutter stepped quite a lot. And many times that was just because I didn't make the connection between my power and how to actually take the action. So helping somebody else make that connection so that they don't wait 5 years until they're in a position like me that's really good at wholesaling.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I'm I want them to get it done in a couple months, and they can. So I definitely see a future in that. I want to be a better brand. I want to be a better coach. It's probably going to take a few steps to get there.
let's dig a little bit more into that journey of getting started from, you said, saying the word wholesale to getting some consistency in your business and being really darn good at it, by the way.
Thank you.
What was that journey like?
Rocky. Oh, so
Yeah.
rocky. And it started with the traditional 3 days in a hotel ballroom where they talk to you about the whole process. And I went because my mother had invited me. She brought her cousin, she wanted me to come. I brought my husband, and we were all locked in there for 3 days. And I was there thinking I was supporting her and figuring out how to purchase her first home. Quickly realized it was a lot more than that, and got I caught the vision. Like day one, I was like, yeah, I could change. I was so sold by all the sparkly lights. I was like, I'm going to change my family's history. I'm going to all these things. And I really, really got fired up and ended up joining the program on like the lowest tier you possibly could. And that low tier meant there was an incredibly short time window. I didn't make
Mm.
it in that time window. I did the work. I did show up. I did ask a lot of questions, but when it came to getting on the phones and making the relationships, I didn't do that part. And so I jumped from that short program over to hiring one person to be my personal coach. And I think they bit off a little bit more than they could chew, because at that point, I knew the process. I didn't realize how many like mental blocks I had that were telling myself I wasn't worthy of a big check, that I was a
Mm.
starving artist, that was my story, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't even realize I needed to get over many of those things. So in that process with that coach, I ended up getting my license. I ended up getting certified in NLP. I ended up purchasing my first flip. And about that time, with my license now and selling my flip, I was like, you know what? I could figure out wholesaling. And I called one of my friends, you know her, Michelle Garabito, and
Hmm.
she had sold me my first flip. And by the way, she is such a good saleswoman that she sold me a flip with foundation issues off of Quebec Street, which is a
Oh
very,
no.
very busy street in Denver. So I was like, I bit off a huge flip. It ended up being profitable, thank goodness. Because of course she would. She'd give me a good property, but it was definitely a lot of work. And I called her up and I was like, hey, you're wholesaling like crazy. You're doing such a good job. What do you know that I don't know? And she said, Jamil. And at that point, I had already asked my family for a lot of money. I had already put a lot of my money into learning this. And the idea of jumping again and asking my husband, hey, I think this is the ticket as to what I need to truly learn it, was hard. Like that was one of those moments of, I'm glad I picked myself up again and I kept going, because meeting Jamil was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I definitely have hidden. I came to the Astro family and I hid for a solid year because I
Mm.
was suspicious, is the best way to put it. And a part of that was that many of the wholesaling programs and coaches that I had already come across were very, it's about your check, it's about your money, be tough, get on the phones, this is what it needs to look like. It was a lot of this, like
Right.
elbowing people in the nose. And I already knew that world from being an artist. And an artist is a very cutthroat game. It's all about self and putting self into work where other people can access that. And I didn't like the way that it interacted with money on the real estate side in the
Mm.
ways that people were showing me. And when I met Jamil, and it became, first off, what's going on with you and your mental capacities that might be hindering you. That was kind of the first thing. And then the second thing is, no, how can you turn this into service? How can you add value? And I started approaching it from there. It all started to make sense. And then I started to actually see deals appear and get sold.
Right. So you just had to like change your paradigm about what it is you were involved with. Maybe, feeling a little guilt about, oh, I'm money driven. I'm, capitalist, I don't, all those kind of like bad words in the art world. You were
Mhm.
doing it. And so like, you just didn't allow yourself to come out until
Yeah.
Jamil gave you a pathway to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're wearing a shirt. Does it say capitalist? I'm guessing underneath that it says pig, right?
It does. Yeah, that was not intentional. Um, but
Oh,
I actually thought about it this morning when I was getting ready, and this is just like a shirt that I like. It kind of reminds me of some things, but I thought about you when I was putting it on.
mm,
Interestingly
mm.
enough, I'm like, wait, Corianne, we've had some good conversations. We got to meet in person. We spent a lot of time on Wholesale 101. But I'm like, I wonder if this shirt kind of stirs up any emotion in that art brain of hers.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you wore it, and I'm glad you thought of me because it took me 3 years to get over. And I'm not saying that my art friends or the art world was specifically calling me a capitalist pig, but my brain was telling me they were. And I did. I lost a lot of followers. I lost a lot of friends. And that's okay. But I think it came from this place of I want to make money. I want to make money so that I can build beautiful things and help other people build beautiful things. And I understand why for many people those things it's hard to compute. Like, why do you need money to build? But I think you can build bigger and better with being a capitalist. So I'm going to work in the system I'm given so that I can be the best kind of artist that I know how to be. And yeah, it was definitely more of what was going on in my own brain as to what I was afraid people would say about me for the first few years. And especially because I was very public in that world. I was helping other people get recognized. I was selling people's work. I actually am very lucky to be the interim gallery director at the University of Northern Colorado up in Greeley. I got to do that for a little while. So I was afraid of that transition. And I feel like if I had come in and just been like, yeah, I'm an artist, I live that, I breathe it, and I'm here to also be an investor and a wholesaler and a realtor, I wish I would have owned that sooner. But now, after the mastermind and after getting to talk to Jamil and really starting to delve into some of those things for myself, I get to wear them both very proudly. And I think it just makes me uniquely me.
It does. And it was the path that you needed to be on to be able to feel comfortable with it. Because imagine if you had just took it head on right out of the gates, like, okay, I'm doing this. Like maybe that would have been, too much and it wouldn't have worked. Right. It would have been, maybe you would have been on your fifth or sixth business, but you didn't force it. You kind of let it happen organically.
Mhm. I told Jamil, I've done almost everything in his book he says not to do. I've done it at some point over the course of those 5 years. And I'm glad that I have, because I think when I really do step into a more coaching like role or whatever that looks like for me, I get to bring all of those L's that I took and save other people from them. So
Oh
it
yeah.
will be a huge benefit that I've done everything wrong at some point.
How many times did you consider quitting and just going back to what you knew and what you knew you could do well?
Benson, sometimes it still happens. It
Mm,
I would say that in the beginning it was every day. I would say now it probably is like once a month. I go, should I be here? Is this the absolute best thing I should be doing with my time? And I think it's going away. And some of that is creating the stability in my company that allows me to go build a YouTube, because I get to pour my creativity heavily into that while utilizing this very technical skill set. Um, so yeah, I hope by the middle of this year, I'm no longer ever questioning that. But every now and then I go, am I actually wearing the investor skin, or am I cosplaying?
right. Cosplay. um, so we all have that within us, right? And you're fortunate enough to have a supportive partner and somebody who you love, and you're doing this together. And you said that you're fortunate enough to be able to have real estate as a way of allowing him to do art full time. How important is it that he's there to support you during those days when it feels like you're doing the wrong thing?
Huge. I mean, it's crazy, one, that he trusted me enough over those 5 years to keep picking myself back up, saying I was going to do the same thing I just failed at. And I give him so much credit, and to some extent want to show up in these things fully as an investor for him because he believed I could do it. Um, I can't imagine if he told me that that wasn't the right thing to do, I probably would agree with him. I'd probably move on and go to something else. Um, so yeah, man, am I grateful that over many of those years, he said it's okay to keep trying. And now the beauty of it is, like, I do say that real estate has allowed him to become a professional artist, but he makes wholesale checks off selling paintings now. So when in November for me was November was okay. December was not a good month. I didn't close anything in December. And that's very unusual for me. But a part of that was because I had just started a completely new company the month before, and was functioning out of that. And he ended up selling a few paintings that completely covered us having a happy, healthy month. And I think I've only seen that happen. Like anywhere where I'm like, oh, I didn't get enough deals done this month, he'll sell a painting. And now we get to have kind of that like yin and yang in our finances. It's just he's wonderful. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to see him hopefully get into even cooler spaces and sell to even cooler people. And I know that he's cheering me on in this, building a brand and building a YouTube. And I think maybe for the first time over the last few months, especially in that shift from just being in the business to being more of a name or being more willing to share, he sees it. He's like, oh yeah, no, you are a good teacher. You like teaching. Why don't you get out there? So yeah, we're in a really good place for a good year, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's only up from here. Like you've already been through the pitfalls. This is now about optimizing the business and figuring out different ways of growing it. And you're already doing stuff virtually, right? In Florida, and you're in beautiful Colorado. And you mentioned Michelle earlier, right?
Yeah.
And Michelle and Paul are they're kind of known as the traveling nomads, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of, I don't know who started that, but it's been coined for them. And I can't help but see the parallels between your vision for Odessa, which is I'm sorry, what would you call it? It was like explain to me. So it was a nomadic art incubator, right? That's
Yeah.
what you called it.
Mhm.
So what are the parallels between like Odessa, real estate, virtual wholesaling, and like say travel? Like, do you think that Colorado is your forever home?
Colorado is definitely my roots place. The ranch that I'm on right now is 85-acre ranch, and my mom just built her home about 10 acres into my backyard. So this is the place that I want to definitely revisit with my kiddos and be close to grandma. And this is that place. But when it comes to, I mean, I think one of the reasons we called ourselves a nomadic incubator is we didn't want to hold down the possibility that like art can happen anywhere. And many people
Mhm.
think art happens in a gallery and you have to go there. But really, art is happening all around us and kind of creating many of the things that we're seeing. And I wanted that represented in Odessa. I wanted to be able to do the kinds of projects that we do anywhere. And we did a couple like really fun ones that were in really unique locations. But for myself, I know for a fact I will be in a few different locations throughout the year and kind of have a rotation of that. Because
Mhm.
living out in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, I love most of the time. And then there are times where my very, very social person just needs some city. And Chicago is my favorite place for that. So eventually I'll be purchasing probably something creative somewhere along the South Shore in Chicago. And
Yeah.
that will be one of my locations. But Michelle and I are definitely going to be meeting on a beach in Spain at some point as well.
Oh, I bet. I bet. I mean, it's so cool the way they live their lives, just kind of traveling the world and doing that. Um, and you guys could do it too. You and Christopher could jump on a boat and go travel the world, and you can make calls from the boat as well. Um,
Mhm.
what's next? I mean, we talked about coaching. You're growing your new business. What's next for you? And as you grow as an entrepreneur, are there any art projects coming up that you're going to be working on?
Nothing very specific in terms of art projects, but I think one of the big jumps for me is going to be sharing the fact that I am making art while I'm on the phone and letting people watch both of those practices. Because one, I get to help out my wholesaling friends, and they get to watch me be on the phones and make mistakes and be embarrassed sometimes. But I also get to do it while creating, and I've really never let those things flow together as well as I do now. So I think what's next for me is just more homogeneous. Like I feel like I'm collecting pieces of myself and I'm putting them all together into one to really hopefully be the best version of myself. And then I want to jump real fast back to Michelle, because I do think that there's something that her and Paul have that I very much looked up to, and was one of the reasons I joined Astro and continue to be one of her close friends today, is that she showed me how to show up in a room full of men and be feminine while also knowing exactly what the heck I'm talking about and not being scared at all about it. And I think when I saw her do it, and she did a lot of encouraging of me to get a backbone in many situations where I didn't have one. Um,
Mm.
but I feel like I can attribute a lot of where I feel most powerful in my skin to Michelle for showing me that it could be done in real estate while still
Right.
being fabulous, which she is.
That's amazing. It's great that you have these different mentors in your life, and people to work with along the way. And you found Michelle before you found Astro and Jamil, which is really cool. Is
Mhm.
that the way it worked out?
Yeah, she found me as a licensed agent and started calling me as a wholesaler. And then I was like, oh,
Mm.
girl, I'm a wholesaler too. And we just started to have fun chats on the phone until she was like, well, maybe you want to buy this property. And I was just coming back from my NLP training. So I was on kind of a mental and emotional high for sure, in terms of like, I can take on the world. And she called me at the airport for that particular property. And I don't think I would have ever gotten through the whole process of buying it if she wasn't such a good sales lady and going, hey, did you get, your hard money lender, blah, 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 blah. Um, and she was so kind about it, because I don't tell many people this, but I got scammed on the sale of that property because who I thought my private money lender was a scam artist. So on the day of close
Oh
is when
no.
I found out that my gap funding wasn't actually going to show up and that I had lost money in doing it. And this is a common scam for a lot of newbies. You need to know that no lender out there is going to ask you for a down payment before they lend. That's not exactly how that works.
Oh,
But I didn't
that
know that.
one. That one.
But yeah, exactly
Darn
that one.
it.
I know it got me, but they didn't get me for too much. It was more the stress of it's day of, and I just found out I'm not closing this property. I've now put my friend Michelle, the wholesaler, in a pickle. And what am I going to go do? And I genuinely can't remember how I figured it out, but we closed on that maybe a day later. So I found somebody who was bringing me that gap funding.
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
figured it
now
out somehow.
you probably have people throwing money at you from all different directions. Like, I want to do business with Corianne. Like, you probably have people coming out of the woodwork now to work with you.
I think that might be the answer to what's next, is actually helping people that don't really want to be in real estate full time, but do want to make money off of real estate, and helping them facilitate their funds into my flips or into buy and holds. I'm not in that place yet, but I think that's definitely a plan for this year.
Oh yeah. Do you remember that girl that spoke at Jamil's mastermind? The young Latina girl. What was her name?
Solely is her
Soli.
name.
If
Hmm.
there's anyone that you could emulate, that would be a great person to emulate in that journey.
I completely agree. And I
Yeah.
was I was a little starstruck when she showed up there, because I've been following her since 2020.
Oh, you
When
mentioned
she
that. I remember when you asked the question. Now I remember. Okay.
And she has come so far so fast that I really had to struggle with the fact that I was like, I started at the same time you did. I just spent 3 years not taking the action, only doing the education.
Right.
And so now yeah, it's really good to see what she's done and what she's become. And that's something that I want to work towards. But I appreciate what she had to say to me, which was, well, there's nothing really aside from take the action.
Right.
And that's really the name of the game. Do the thing that you're scared of. I started this practice of doing a dare a day. And really all that means is that whatever my subconscious is telling me I've got to do that day that I'm probably already telling it I don't want to do, I do one a day.
What's an example of one that you did recently?
One I did recently was call my CPA for back taxes for Odessa for 2 years ago. And she had been
Mm.
working on it, but she was saying there was an issue, and I was so terrified. What is this issue? And this was the year we did the flip that we're actually still working on taxes for. Um, but it was so easy. Once I actually got on the phone with her, she walked me through the whole process. She was like, "Oh, this is how you read it, and this is what you owe me, and this is what you owe the IRS." And it was so simple, and it felt amazing to have that monkey off my back, because what I was thinking it could be was so much worse. So I'm doing things like that as I encourage other people to get on the phone, which for me is not scary at all anymore. I'm trying to do things that are scary. And some of that is like showing up here or showing up on Wholesale 101 or having my own YouTube. Most of the things that scare me have to do with putting my face out there. And I'm doing so much more of it. So
Good.
yeah, it's been
You need to
fun.
do more of it. You're really good at it. But I'm
Thank
curious,
you.
what is that big scary thing that is right in front of you that you're avoiding completely?
Everything in front of me.
What's tomorrow's dare? Right? Like what is it that you need to dare yourself to do that's coming soon?
Where I can put my skills to the test to be in a scenario like Soli. I got to see Soli give a whole presentation and talk about what she's been doing, and I was so inspired, and I want to be that too. And so it's a combo of either getting on stage somewhere or probably even scarier, asking somebody if I can be on their stage.
Oh yeah. Right. Like that, those limiting beliefs, like, am I good enough to be on the stage kind of thing? You know where a great
Yeah.
place would be, and I'm sure it could happen is the Squat Up Summit.
Yeah. I don't know what they are planning on for that, but it is going to be loads of fun.
Yeah.
And between you, me, and everybody that listens to your podcast, I one of like my biggest goals, if I could be anything in this world, would be the MC for Jamal and Pace.
Ooh.
If you've ever been to like a Tykes event, I think his name is Paul or Pat. No, his name is Pat. Pat is the MC for Ryan Pineda and all things Tykes. Like you'll always
Mm.
see him on stage hyping them up. And basically, I want to be a professional hype person for Jamil.
You
One day.
We already are, right? Like we're always talking about it because it's real and it's true. But I could
Yeah.
see doing that exceptionally well. That's something that is probably in the near future coming up.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
really hope so. I'm definitely focused on it. It's something when Jamil asked me to do the Wholesale 101, I told him I was like, you're speaking directly to me because I've put our faces together on my visionary board for so long. And it was that I always wanted to be on stage at some point with Jamil. And I consider Wholesale 101 as a check for that, is that I get to be on his virtual stage and I get to show up with you and it's a huge blessing. It's definitely a direction that I want to go. And I think that's why I'm pushing myself to show up more on Instagram and YouTube, is I really want to be somebody who's deserving of that. And I think there's so many people who are so great at real estate and at sharing and putting into people that I just want to be alongside them.
Oh yeah. I think you definitely deserve it and you're going to be very good at it when it happens. I hope I'm
Thank you.
there when it does
You
happen.
will
You got
be.
to let me know. Um, but I really enjoyed talking to you and learning more about you and you just gave such a huge amount of value in people watching this. I know that you're going to inspire people to take action. And, I just think there's so many big things coming for you and your new business. So I want to thank you for taking the time, because I know you're really busy, but thank you so much. I'm just so appreciative.
Thanks, Benson. And I do want to say that when I started, and I didn't think that there were any other artists out there that were doing real estate, and that's why I shouldn't tell anybody I was an artist. The more I tell people that I am both things, the more I find creative-minded people in all sorts of different arts where this is their dream. And I think that's really cool. So if there's anybody out there who's listening and they're like, yeah, I'm an artist person, reach out. I would love to hear what you might be doing in real estate, or what you might be scared to do in real estate because you're creative. There are so many of us now. I could have a whole club.
And you should. And for those people that are resonating with that, where can they find you?
So best place to find me right now is on Instagram. It is at Corianne Wright. Soon you can find me on YouTube, also at Corianne Wright, but I don't know exactly what that channel will be called. So just find us on Wholesale 101, and then from there you'll probably get a link to my new YouTube.
So cool. Well, thank you again, Corianne. I'm looking forward to hearing more stories in the near future. Maybe we'll have you back here in a bit after you get to MC one of Jamal's events, and we can learn about that experience too. But thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Benson. Oh, and if they want to email me, anything in Tampa or Colorado, I can be incredibly helpful with. And that's at deals@closewithkickflip.com.
Perfect. All righty. Well, thanks again, everybody. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast.
Bye, guys.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.